Hands up when you're ready and we'll call us to order. Good morning, everyone. We just actually have another couple minutes before I'll call to order. So I want to start right at 10 o'clock. Oh, and it's 9:59 now. So one more minute.
You can do presentation.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our July 5th Governance and Priority Committee meeting. Just to check in, we have Councillor Vandenberg joining us via Teams or Zoom. Councillor Vandenberg, are you there?
I am, thank you.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Smith joining via telephone. Councillor Smith?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you. So we have an,
Thank you.
thank you for that. We have an agenda before us. Looking for someone to move the agenda. Councillor Blaser?
Could I just ask a question on that?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I'm looking at 9A and just questioning if this is here for debate or information.
It is here for information.
Should it not be moved to information items, Madam Chair?
Let me see. So my intent of putting it here was to clarify the information in the letter. So I guess will be some discussion as opposed to debate.
Okay.
Well, it still should be moved to information then. It can still be discussed.
I'm turning to Mr. Coleman, who helps, of course, with the agenda.
So I'm not sure what the relevance is between information or where it's at in the agenda. Be council's prerogative if you want to move it. Either section there's an opportunity to discuss, debate,
Okay.
pass a motion, what have you. So.
Okay. Does that help? Councillor Blaser, were you going to move the agenda?
Yes.
Hey, Councillor Amanda moves the agenda as presented, or you wanted a change?
No, if it doesn't matter where it goes, we can just move it as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to move as presented. All in favor? Opposed?
I do oppose.
Thank you.
I'll oppose as well. Generally, those are in information. Every letter that we do that's a request to council. So again, I'm just not wondering why it's in that. And again, for clarity, I understand that letter much the same as I understand most of the other information that comes in. So again, I'd like why I oppose it today, unless we decided to change how we present these. I guess maybe are we setting a precedent today? So that's why I oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 5 in favor and 2 against, so it is passed. We have minutes of the June 7th Governance and Priorities meeting. Councillor Wanchuk will move those. All in favor? Thank you. Councillor Vandenberg, Councillor Smith, generally when we have councillors who are joining us remotely, we are assuming you're in favor unless you speak up. Do you want to continue that way, or do you want to be able to vote on each and every item? Councillor Vandenberg?
I'm good with the way we've been doing it.
Okay, so we will assume you're in favor unless we hear from you. Councillor Smith?
That's correct. Yes, I assume I'm in favor unless I indicate differently. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to our first presentation of the morning and welcome Margot Haggerty from Leduc Regional Housing Foundation, who's going to provide with us an overview of the 2021 annual report.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Madam.
Margot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm taking this opportunity to go out and meet with each of the municipalities. So I was hired into the organization in the midst of the beginning of COVID. So of course, I didn't get the opportunity to meet so many people at that time. So everything was been done virtual or haven't had the opportunity. So decided that now that things have settled down in that area, so I really appreciate the opportunity when we requested that there was such a great welcome. So I'm here to just kind of give you an overview. I'm not going to get into too much detail of the annual report because I know you've all had it for quite a while. More, I'm going to talk to it and give you kind of an update on our organization, where we're at, the strategic plans that we've got, and the challenges that we're facing right now. And so some of this I know a few of you I'm very familiar with because you're on our board, and excited to see you here. Get to be in your playground instead of vice versa. So this is quite lovely. But some of you will not know some of this information, and of course, open to any questions after I'm done. We have 19 communities in 7 municipalities. A lot of times people don't realize that. We think of the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation, they think of seniors, they think of Plainview. But in fact, we have 5 different housing solutions. We have the supportive living program, which is Plainview in Leduc and Cloverleaf out in Warburg. And those are supportive living program is where we offer all the meals, all the hotel services, and those are for seniors. Then we run a senior self-contained program, and that is apartment style living, independent living, that's specifically for seniors, and that's a government program that we operate on their behalf. Then we have affordable housing, and that's near market rents, and we have 8 of those buildings throughout the region, and that is owned by Leduc Regional Housing Foundation. And the last program, the community housing, social and community housing is in Leduc. We have 64 townhouses that's very specific for families, and it's deep subsidized, and again, a government program that we operate. And the last program that we operate is Rent Supplement. We have approximately $1.1 million that we use each year to support individuals that meet all our criteria to get up to $450 a month rent wherever they live. Some of them live with us and some of them live in private residence. So there's quite an option and a lot of solutions. So anyone that's applying with us, we look at what's best for them and we go from there. What's really important for everyone to be aware of is that we're full up. Our lodges aren't. So the supportive living program really got hit hard by the COVID. And so we're starting to actually get back in. As of this morning, Plainview is up to 92.5% occupancy, which we were down to 80% with COVID. People were not looking at that type of housing at that time, as we can all appreciate. Cloverleaf, we were up 55%. So that's partly is because you just don't have access to the services out in Cloverleaf that, is easy for you to stay in that town. And then we're talking about, medical services and the ease. And also a lot of people are moving to where their families are. And so as people are migrating to larger centers, they're taking mom and dad with them or grandma and grandpa with them. So we have 9 board members, 7 are based on municipality councillors, and of course, Leduc County has 2. And then we have a member at large. We have 2 sets of financials. And when I say that, it sounds a little bit like, what? You have 2 sets of books? And when I say that, we have a set of financials that is our government operations, and then we have our Leduc Regional Housing financials. Our operating budget is about $11.5 million a year. We have got together in 2021, the board at that time with the senior management team, and we came up with a 5-year strategy plan. And we did a lot of work. We did a PEST and a SWOT, and there was a lot of discussion. In that 5-year, we identified 4 pillars or 4 priorities that we wanted to focus on over the next 5 years. One of these is awareness and education, building our brand. I'm new to the community. I came from Calgary, and so I had a different set of eyes. And so I was coming going, nobody really knows who Leduc Regional Housing Foundation is unless you're directly involved with them. There was no signs on our buildings. There's all these things. So we need to really get out there and make sure that people are aware of what we offer and who we are and what we can do. So that's part of the reason I'm coming out and meeting with you. So this is my first presentation with the municipality, but I'm hoping to do this pretty regularly on an annual basis, give updates on what we're doing. So the next piece is partnerships and collaboration. We cannot be everything to everyone when it comes to low income housing. We absolutely cannot. But we have incredible relationships. We've got a relationship with Dean back here, FCSS. There's many, many relationships that we have, and we need to celebrate them, and we need to foster them, and we need to nurture them. And so that's another big focus. When we started to have conversations with our staff and our residents, they were really unaware of all the other buildings that they have. I'd say, who do you work for? And they go, oh, I work for Plainview, or, I work for this. They didn't realize you worked for Leduc Regional Housing Foundation. And the residents at the Seniors Lodge really had no idea that, just across the street is family housing over at Willows from Plainview. And so we're starting to really build that we're a community, we're a larger community made up of 19 smaller communities. Just this last year, we had the seniors at the lodges knit scarves and toques and mittens for all of the children in our housing projects. That didn't sound quite correct in our housing communities. So we're starting to really work on partnerships and collaboration with our partners and starting to really celebrate that. And we're going to do a lot more work in that area. The other piece is infrastructure. Obviously maintaining our assets, maintaining them well, but also looking at the potential for future development. And right now, as we all know, there's a capital financial crunch for everyone. The economy's, all over the map. And so what do we need to do? And we have solely relied on funding to be able to build. And we've recognized that we need to get more creative than that, because, the coffers are only so big. And so we need to be aware that our next develops are going to require support from municipalities, from the province, potentially from federal, and from fundraising. So we're looking at all these different options. And we have to share, our wait lists are so significant. Right now, we have 102 people on our wait list for 1-bedroom suites right now in our community. That's a lot for a small, region like we are. We have 67 people on our wait list for the rent supplement program. So there's a big gap here. So we have some work to do. And so we're getting creative, and we're going to come up with all these great ideas, and we're going to keep coming back to all of you guys and sharing, what ideas are working, what can we do to help each other. And some of the things we're talking about is having, our board members sitting in September at our community awareness, because if we set up a table at the community awareness, nobody wants to talk to us. They go in to register their children for the different events, but our counselors and our board members said, we'll sit at the tables with you. And we're like, yes, because now everybody's going to come and talk to us. So we're just getting a little bit more creative. So that's a quick snapshot on what's happening right now for Leduc Regional Housing Foundation. We have a wonderful, wonderful organization that's been around since 1963. There's amazing things that are being done, and we just want to do more. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much, Margot, and thank you for the snapshot. And just say that I'm pleased to have joined the board just recently, and had a great first board meeting and governance committee meeting as well. So we will open up any questions for Margot related to the Housing Foundation, her presentation, or any other questions you might have. Councillor Lewis.
No questions, just a comment. I was part of the hiring team that hired Margot. And I know the great work that she's done for the Housing Foundation. And I just want to say thanks for coming in to visit with us today. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lewis. And again, new eyes always look at the pieces that appreciate the pieces that have been done by the former executive director, but always are able to see areas that we could improve on. And I hear that from you both in our orientation and in our meetings. So thank you for that. Looking for someone to move this for information. Councillor Scobie, all in favor? It is unanimous. You caught us in a good mood. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And have a great summer.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
And next, I believe we have Kate to talk about the Alberta Capital Region Wastewater Commission, one of the longest acronyms that we have.
Yeah.
And you can't make it into a word.
No, ACRWC is a bit of a mouthful. I'm just going to pull up my presentation here so I can drive.
Yeah, and whenever you're ready, Kate, you can
betcha.
start.
Perfect. So I'd like to just take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Kate Polkowski. I'm the general manager for the Alberta Capital Region Wastewater Commission. I've been with the commission now for almost a year. I think it'll be a year next week. So enough to get my feet wet and be comfortable with the work I do. I came from doing a fair bit of regional work within the capital region. So I was really comfortable with the framework when I came over to the Alberta Capital Region Wastewater Commission. It's a neat split when we talk about the capital region. You folks fit into our kind of, we sort of put you in the southern members bucket because it provides a lot of benefit to you guys. Technically speaking, my southern members, I don't get the pleasure of treating your wastewater on a daily basis. Your wastewater goes to the city of Edmonton to Gold Bar. However, you capitalize on our lower rate that we do have below EPCOR. So we have a regional exchange agreement with EPCOR that talks about the most sustainable way to provide wastewater servicing to the region, because it is a really big region. And in that agreement, you get a bill from me, but between EPCOR and myself, we pay the lower of the two rates, which is really quite fantastic. We are 60 cents lower per cubic meter than EPCOR right now. So that's really a great capitalization on the power of being that bigger conglomerate that does things as sustainable as possible.
So Kate, may I ask a question about this map?
Of course.
Where is the pump station that moves our effluent through the city of Edmonton?
So you guys have, so down here in Leduc
Yep.
Leduc County, you guys go into a regional trunk. We actually have a fair bit of EPCOR wastewater that
Okay.
goes into the trunk as well. And
Okay.
we provides a leasing bit of an opportunity with EPCOR so that they can use that pipe. And then it goes directly into the EPCOR system at that particular point there.
And if I may, and it pumps all the way up to that where it says Alberta Capital Regional Wastewater?
No, so that's
Nope.
my plant.
Okay.
EPCOR's plant, let's call it right about where my arrow is, if you can see. Oh, geez, backwards, right about there.
Okay.
So Gold Bar Park.
Oh, right. Gold
Down in
Bar.
Capilano.
I thought they were closing that down.
No,
Okay.
they'll keep that one going as long as possible, but
Okay.
they have maxed out on square footage that they've got there.
Okay.
So you guys, the southern group, their wastewater goes directly to that Gold Bar through the Edmonton system. Now, in saying that, Edmonton sends me a bunch of their wastewater north of 153rd Avenue.
Okay.
So there's a bit of an exchange that happens on either side. It's
Okay.
really about capitalizing on gravity as much as possible. Gravity's free. I don't have to pay for that. So that's really
Well,
about,
you probably get taxed on it though.
yeah, I might, but not yet. Anyway, so that's sort of how it works, generally
Okay,
speaking.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. A bit of history about the commission for anyone who doesn't know it. We were formed in 1985. The plant was designed and built by the province at a 90% grant dollars. And we have a number of agreements with EPCOR that make the whole system work. From the regional exchange agreement that I spoke to, from biosolids as well. And that's really sort of what I'll describe as wet fertilizer in terms of making it more solid. So it's about 7% solid. So it's not real solid, it's pretty wet. But we work together with EPCOR to make it as solid as possible. And we use some positive lambda treatment with those biosolids. From a legislation perspective, there's really three pieces that provide us the framework of how we do our business. The MGA, so again, that's really about how commissions function, and it did give us quite a bit of autonomy as they made the updates to the MGA a few years ago. The Alberta Environment Protection Act has two pieces that really affect us. They provide us the parameters to which we treat to, so how much treatment we do before we put it back into the North Saskatchewan River, as well as it does maintain the level of operation for my operators. So I am required to have different operators to different levels on the plant, and that legislation sort of mandates that and maintains it with those people. And then the Federal Fisheries Act, and this is really a piece of legislation that I don't hope to play with very often because it relates to releases into water bodies. So it only comes in situations where we've had a bit of a challenge. We have a pretty lean organization. So I have a board of 13, one member from each member municipality. Councillor Smith is your board member, and I report to them. And then I have 4 departments, my O&M, which is my operation and maintenance group, and they really keep the system running properly. They are out in the field. I have one transmission operator that maintains 190 kilometers of wastewater line, which is a lot of line in the field to be looking at on a daily basis. And then the majority of them from the millwrights, the electricians, the actual operators, they're working on the plant on a daily basis because it is relatively complicated.
So what would your staffing complement be?
51.
51, thank you.
Yeah. My corporate services, those are, they make sure people get paid, purchasing, HR, et cetera. Regulatory services, I have a group in here that works very directly with your administration on a monthly basis or so. And they're doing that source control program. So making sure any of your high users, your industry users are kind of meeting your bylaws, and they work with your public works folks, as well as out in the real world. And then we maintain a full lab within that particular department as well. So we are testing the wastewater regularly. And then my engineering department, and again, they work with you guys as well in terms of growth and development, but as well as maintaining our assets, our capital program, et cetera. From a governance perspective, just going back to there, we have one director from each member council. They must be an elected official, and they serve independently of their council. They oversee the bylaws and policies. And then we also have standing and ad hoc committees to sort of support the overall management of the commission. We, generally speaking, have bi-monthly meetings and an annual workshop. Budget, that's always a really interesting piece. So we have a $30.2 million operating budget annually. Our capital program is 28. New debt's always an interesting piece. Why do you have new debt? Well, new debt basically is about managing our cash flow. So in about the 7-year mark, we become self-sustaining in terms of not needing any new debt to support any of our capital programs. As you can imagine, our pipelines are large. So when we do have draws, they are substantial. So while we can maintain the payments, we just can't maintain them on a monthly basis. So within the 7-year window, we become fully sustaining, not needing to pull new debt. And our revenue, we are a kind of net zero operating facility. So our revenues equal our expenses on an annual basis. Our flow rate today is 1.42 meters cubed per dollars per meter cube. So this has perfect. Okay, so this is just a real simple schematic of what it is in terms of how we treat our wastewater. So we have raw wastewater that comes in, and it actually comes in sort of at the top of this particular picture, what I would call the headworks of it. It goes through the various tanks of our system. Now, the interesting piece with the wastewater commission is we treat all of that ugly wastewater with bugs exclusively. There are no chemicals added. It is a natural process with different tanks and different oxygen levels, et cetera. So we use gravity and we use bugs to treat all of the constituents within the wastewater, which is really quite interesting. At the end, we get a relatively clean, very clear water that comes out and joins the North Saskatchewan. And from that, we have some GHGs, which are released or utilized on site, typically during the winter months, and a biosolids program that we work with EPCOR to maintain. And our biosolids programs are a really interesting one. We are one of the few groups between us and EPCOR that positively apply our biosolids. So in BC, a lot of biosolids programs are applied to landfill as well as out east. They're also applied to landfill. There's just no interest in using them with farmers or reclamation projects. Whereas we are able to do that here, which is fantastic. So our facility, we are the 3rd largest wastewater treatment plant in Alberta. So we are biological nutrient removal, which means bugs in essence. We have 5 large scale pump stations with pumps of up to 700 horsepower engines in essence. So those are really, really big pumps. And more of 50% of our assets are remote offsite, which creates its own challenges for us to make sure we have eyes on them on a daily basis, especially during weather like this. This is really a challenging experience for my folks. There's about 190 kilometers of force main and gravity line in the world for us. And right now our replacement value sits at about $700 million. Again, our collaboration is one of the strongest pieces I think we have within the commission. We do see ourselves in an extension of each of our members' wastewater systems, and we work quite closely with them depending on what their needs are and what sort of their rate base is sort of made up of. Our source control program engages heavily with members and industry and professionals to make sure we are providing both kind of that inherent protection to the system, to your system as well as our system. Our solids handling program, which is a really fantastic exhibit of how we're working collaboratively, to which Leduc County is part of. Our rural members are more member of this particular group. So Parkland County, Leduc County, and Sturgeon County, because you have the truck dump stations for your more rural community members. Again, we have that regional exchange agreement and the biosolids agreement that we work with EPCOR. So, and this is just a really nice picture of what our wastewater looks like as it gets through the system. So on the left is the raw influent, what it looks like as we get through primary treatment. It looks a little bit better. And then our final effluent is what that looks like. So again, no chemicals added, and we're able to produce water that you might mistake that's drinkable. It's not, but it's pretty darn close.
Well, thank you for clarifying that.
Some of our strengths we find is reducing loads to the river. So again, it is a real benefit of what we can provide in terms of environmental protection to the North Saskatchewan River. Our source control program, we run 2 environmental management systems. So ISO, we have a 14,001 and a 10,012 for our lab specifically. We focus on our relationships. And when I've had a chance to meet with all of the member municipalities administration team since I joined, and I think that was one of the real strengths that they noted. And I came from that side of the world, that there's a lot of collaboration. They see a lot of benefit when we bring people together, which is different from the water commissions, that we're able to bring those pieces together and have those professionals really talk to one another about the opportunities, challenges, et cetera, that they see. Our project delivery, our operations, and our labs are above par, and they do a fantastic job irrespective of the weather and the challenges that they see on a daily basis. So again, what we really see is ourselves as an extension of our member systems, and really it's about collaboration for us to kind of do the job as best we can. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much. Councillor Blaser.
Yeah, I'm going back a couple slides and I see Federal Fisheries Act.
Yeah.
Now, you're talking about your affluent and clean and going to the river. Is this where the Federal Fisheries Act comes in? Is that the jumping point? And if you're not clean enough, then what happens?
So it's more so when we have an unintended release. So say a pipe collapses and untreated wastewater hits the North Saskatchewan. That's when I have a Federal Fisheries Act issue. When it comes to the treated water, so the different tubes of water and maintaining the clarity of the water, that's managed by Alberta Environment.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Kate, one of the issues we're seeing in a lot of these commissions and other places is around capacity. You know, the ability to grow. Everybody's growing. The city of Leduc is growing. We're growing here in an urban sort of standard. What's our capacity limit? I mean, are we talking 2 years? Are we talking 14 years, depending on growth? And looking ahead then, if we're looking at getting to the end of our capacity, what's the plan for increasing capacity and how would that be costed?
Great question. So we run a 10-year utility model to ensure that the rate is as stabilized as possible so that people aren't seeing fluctuations to the rate. And with that, we have built in plant expansions into that rate and into our capital program going out. My engineering department works very closely with, generally speaking, the engineering departments of all of the administrations to talk about development. What are the approved ASPs? How are things coming? Okay. What are the weird things that are happening that's going to hit the systems that are going to impact you, and what are those timelines? And we are typically ready for them.
Okay,
our mandate is to not hinder growth.
Right.
So in saying that, we have a plant expansion that's on the books that is kind of in design right now. It's actually into tender proposal stage right now, that would be built 2024.
Oh, so just around the corner. So
yeah,
okay.
And it was always on the books. It hasn't gone faster or slower. We are an interesting entity in the sense that I have a lot of high industry clients in my members. So our plant expansions actually pushed by concentration and not by wastewater flow. We have flow problems on days like today, like every other wastewater treatment plant. However, our kind of baseline is concentration. So that was what it was based off of. Still on the same timeline. So, because if you think low flush toilets, all those pieces, we actually haven't seen the flow rate increase. We've seen the concentration increase over the last 10 years.
And one of my, why I asked that question, pardon me, is because of course we have NISCU, which depending on the type of development happening there may or may not be putting a lot of water into the system. We heard from the Little Potato Company last Thursday about how they have a new wash cycle, a new way of washing that actually uses a quarter or about half of the water. I can't remember, but they're really mindful of how much water they're putting in and how much they're taking out. So that's helpful for you as well, I would assume.
You betcha. And for some of our heavy users, and again, it depends on what heavy is for any particular member, because you could again have an industry that literally is like a bathroom and a coffee pot that has a big pipe in front of it, right? And we were able to work with some of our bigger industries that if they are using more water than they're spitting out substantially, like there's a big differential, we can put in meter chambers outside of their particular lot to meter specifically what they're coming off. Generally speaking, we just meter based on 80% of water use.
Okay, well, thank you. Any further questions for Kate? Well, this is, I think, I've been on council for 9 years. This is the first presentation by the commission, and I really appreciate it. It was very informative and easy to follow, so thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you.
All right.
And I will say there's an invitation. If any of you ever want a tour of the facility, I am always open for business. So come by. Rick can definitely link you up into me, and we would love to have you guys out for a tour.
Okay, well, thank you for that invitation as well. So with that, are there any more questions? Seeing and hearing none, someone move for information. Councillor Lewis, thank you very much. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Finstad.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's greatly appreciated.
We'll let you get settled, and whenever you're ready.
So today I'm here on behalf of Alberta Care, the Alberta Coordinated Action for Recycling Enterprises. And the request is kind of a simple one, but before I get to that, let me just give you a little background for those that may not know much about Alberta Care. So the purpose of Alberta Care is to improve services for Alberta Care municipal members. And the organization is a regional voice to promote waste management in Alberta, primarily those areas outside of Calgary, Edmonton, which typically have larger voice, bigger budgets, and kind of do their own thing. We also provide a website forum for information and sharing members' challenges and finding solutions to address those issues. And we continue to develop partnerships with industry stakeholders. In the short term, the board of directors attempts to meet with the Minister of Environment a minimum of once a year. During the previous administration, our attempts went 0 for 4 for the 4 years that we tried to meet with the minister. Within the first few months of the new government, we were able to meet with the minister and move forward from there. We also consult with government industry on initiatives for environmental sustainability through recycling and waste management. We promote waste diversion through an enhanced public education and awareness program, and we increase the number of recycling material streams under the Alberta Care programs. We maintain Alberta Care e-waste program, which has a means of paying more than the typical e-waste recyclers that provide. So long-term, we continue to develop credibility and the ability to influence decision makers, develop certificate course programs in waste management, thereby promoting safe, environmentally sound and efficient waste management practices. So today my ask is, the request is for the City of Leduc and Leduc County to jointly co-sponsor the Alberta Care Conference, which will be held in Leduc at the Executive Royal Inn from September 7th to 9th. And Sponsorship in total is $20,000. City of Leduc has committed to the $20,000 expenditure. However, we are reaching out to see if the county wants to co-sponsor us. About 5 years ago, the city and county sponsored that event which was held in Leduc. And we garnered about 142 participants, delegates, sponsors, things of that nature. This time out, we're expecting at least 160 plus. The conference price registration fee is $525, which is substantially less than most conferences of this nature. The conference registration also includes the various tours, which will include the eco station, the public drop-off area, the take it or leave it center, the aerator system that we use to help minimize leachate and that kind of things, as well as the new shredder compactor baler that we, after 2 years, we just finally have the training to be able to operate that thing. We were held up by COVID for a couple of years, being able to actually handle that. So in addition to the split co-sponsorship, each participant, both the city and the county, will have a booth available for during out the period of the conference. The mayors of each community will be provided free access to come and go to the seminars. And in addition to which, there'll be 2 additional registrations provided for someone who wants to attend. So if you have any questions, I've been a director with Alberta Care for about 10 years. I was just re-elected or reaffirmed or reappointed, if you will, at their last regional meeting here a couple of weeks ago. So if you have any questions, please fire away.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Finstad. Any questions around the request for sponsorship or the Alberta Care Conference in general? Go ahead, Councillor Blaser.
Okay. I'm glad to move that as well that I.
Microphone, please.
Kelly just caught me before you did. Glenn, I thank you for that. We've been together on this for a long time. What I can say is the new grinder shredder, we both seen that in operation down at, I think it was Brooks many years ago.
High River, I think.
Was it High River?
It could have been. I've been to so many as you
Yes.
have.
But anyway, we both seen that operate, and I know we were both pretty well part of bringing that to this facility here in Leduc because of how it works. And also, I do know Alberta Care was really instrumental in bringing the farm plastic recycling around the province, which now I think we're going to be starting here shortly, if I'm not mistaken on that. So it has done a lot of good things, and I'm actually quite proud to be involved in that because it's a very good operation as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Councillor Lewis?
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation, Glenn. Just wondering why you're coming to us now after all the promotional material has been done up with everything promoting the city of Leduc.
This brochure is actually a draft, even though it doesn't indicate draft. The final version will be submitted once either the county says yay or nay, in order to make sure that you're appropriately recognized in the brochure and other materials as well. Reason for the delay was I'd had some just brief discussions with a few of the council members saying, hey, here the conference is coming up, or do you think you guys would be on board? And then a bit of a delay was trying to get on the agenda with, I know you guys are as busy as we are, getting on agendas is not always easy. So it took a little longer to get here, but that's why we're here now.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Lewis?
Yeah,
or sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Again, Glenn, just the concerns I have that, again, we've partnered on stuff like this before. I can be supportive of that, but I wanted to make sure that it's clearly indicated that Leduc County and the city of Leduc are co-sponsoring it, that, you know, it's a show of working together and stuff. So if you can assure us that that's addressed, and if the sponsorship goes forward, Leduc County and the city of Leduc have equal recognition, just that, you know, we're in it, we support it, and we're just wondering if it's too late to add a trip to the airport as one of the, again, they do a lot of energy savings. It's maybe one of the field trips as an add-on because it's obvious an asset. So I'm in support of the membership if, again, we can be assured that there's an equal opportunity for the participants to understand that two municipalities are sharing the, sharing the cost and sharing the presentation. Thank you.
Councillor Pinstead?
Yeah, no problem. We have reached out to the airport and asked them if they wanted to either provide part of a tour. The tours are quite extensive that we've got so far, and it was just a matter of there's so much in this region that we could share. It's just a matter of how do you get around to maximize as many as possible and trying to maintain those that are of most interest to more members. So the delegates and sponsors and things of that nature, they come from all areas of the province. So not everybody has an airport. Not everybody appreciates what this airport does for the region.
Okay, I'm just gonna, I know I have you, Councillor Balazar. Mr. Coleman, I believe we're at zero at sponsorship money, or do we still have sponsorship money?
Perhaps.
Maybe Ms.
Claus
Comasco knows?
can answer.
It is my understanding that we have fully utilized our sponsorship
That's what I thought.
money.
Okay,
at
so
this time.
if council were to determine that they wanted to do this, where would the funding come from? Yeah, Ms. Comasco?
So we can take a couple of different approaches. So one would be to recognize that if we have surplus at the end of the year, that surplus dollars be utilized, and then we could also identify a reserve that we could draw from.
All right, thank you. Councillor
Sir
Balazar?
Vandenberg?
Oh, sorry, I have Councillor Balazar and then Councillor Vandenberg.
Yes, Glenn, you brought up the airport. The last time that we were here, or you were, or conference was here, we did go to the airport. And I was telling Councillor Vandenberg how interesting that was. And if somehow you could swing this, I'm sure that everybody would be really, I wouldn't use the word excited, but the words interested to see how that facility works, because everybody sees upstairs, but what goes downstairs is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I know it was pretty stinky, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the smell is one thing, but I mean, there's a lot that goes on there that nobody knows about.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vandenberg.
Yes, I would. Thanks, Glenn, for coming in today. I would echo that, which has probably been already talked about, and basically half the, if we half the fee, we should have half the billing. We talked about the brochures with Leduc County being featured. One of the things also would be formal messaging from Leduc County pertaining to, as I look at the agenda pertaining to the opening and such. And I'll echo again that EIA's opportunity. They have done a fantastic job with a carbon reduction initiative that's quite mind-blowing, really, as to what they've done and what they're working on, and all the different areas in the airport and around the airport that many people would find extremely interesting. So I would support the EIA as well in this.
Thank you. I guess my only other question would be, is there any opportunity for any of the hotels or restaurants or anything across the street in County of Leduc to have an advantage of having some of the business coming here? I know that your accommodations, it just says Executive Royal Hotel. Any chance of expanding that? And
So typically last time when it was held here, I believe the Executive Inn was the conference hotel, but because of the numbers of people that do arrive, the other hotels proximate to that, so on the other side of Airport Road, benefited from that with more attendees expected this time out.
Okay.
I'm sure that will be there. And the intent to, Your Worship, is where it's got the opening comments, that would be jointly shared. What would be shared, you would have your opening comments as well as Mayor Bob and the MLA. This was done, they had to put something together. It was done. We didn't want to commit or force you or
absolutely,
feel you were committed by putting the county information on there
we get it.
prior to getting your approval.
And we would expect photos of Leduc County, stock
Absolutely.
photos in here as well,
Yeah.
those types of things. I'm going to just turn to Mr. Coleman for a second. Generally, we refer these back to council for budget decisions, or we can make a budget decision in governance and priorities.
You can make a decision to commit to funding today here.
Okay,
Can I jump in?
go ahead, Councillor Smith.
I'll make a motion to do a shared sponsorship with the city of Leduc and the money be allocated from budget surplus 2022.
And so you are saying $10,000, Councillor Smith, if I can clarify your motion?
Yes, I believe that's the ask.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for, I have a comment from Ms. Klamosko as we're working on the motion.
Would there be consideration just to add a reserve also to the motion, just in case there is not a surplus to be utilized? Then we have that
Yes,
council
I've heard
approval
that.
to draw from reserves. So I would recommend the stabilization and contingency operating reserve.
Okay, and I will
Yes,
wait.
that's-
Ms. Gavin is busily typing up your motion, and when it's on the screen, I'll read it back to you, Councillor Smith, if I can see it.
Thank you for adding that.
So it says that G&P approved the request for funding from the Alberta Coordinated Action on Recycling. I can't read the next word. Enterprise. Maybe Ms. Gavin, can you read it out? Thanks. We need a
That
bigger.
Committee Member Smith moves that the GMP approve the funding by Alberta Coordinated Action for Recycling Enterprises to co-sponsor the 2022 annual Alberta Recycling Conference in the amount of $10,000, with funding to be allocated through surplus dollars or reserve funding.
Stabilization.
Yes, just do Councillor Smith, not committee members.
I think because we're in a committee, we're all committee members. We're only counselors at a council meeting. I'm getting a nod from Mr. Coleman on that. Okay. So the motion's on the floor, and you were okay with that, Councillor Smith? Committee member Smith?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, I think this is an opportunity for the county to be recognized for the collaborative work that is done with the city of Leduc. I am hopeful and trusting that equal billing will be provided by the city of Leduc with us, and that it will be a very successful conference. So that's good news. Councillor Lewis.
Just confirmation on the motion. It doesn't actually have surplus dollars at the end. Looks like that was really-
Stabilization and or contingency funding. What
Is
should
that
that
the-
say, Councillor or
is that
Ms.
correct?
Klamosko?
It can be through 2022 operating surplus dollars or the stabilization and contingency reserve.
Okay. It now says through 2022 operating surplus dollars or stabilization and or contingency funding. So take that out.
Stabilization and contingency reserve funding.
Got
And
it.
contingency
Thanks.
reserve funding,
Thanks.
right? So if we have a surplus, we'll use that. Otherwise, we'll use our stabilization and other funding. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenn, for the opportunity for Leduc County to participate in this. This is great for the region and great for all of us. So thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any further comments or questions? I am seeing none. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. When I made the presentation to City Council, I stressed the fact that I wanted to make sure that we approved up to $20,000, but explained that our intent was to work in a collaborative manner with the county, and hopefully that you would share in this this conference as well. And I'm very pleased that it's happened. I'll also get on to the executive director, making sure the brochure is updated.
And certainly
that-
work out, you can reach out through Ms. Klamosko and communications so that we can ensure that
Yeah, you bet.
those sorts of things are reflected.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration. Take care.
Thank you very much. Mr. Honesty.
Yeah, too late.
Accessible Waters presentation to Governance Priorities Committee on February 1st, 2022, follow-up.
Thank you. We have a report and a follow-up from your February 1st presentation from the Accessible Waters Initiative, and a follow-up motion to come back with administrative options to support this initiative. But we have reviewed and have had some communications with this organization, and have identified a couple options where we can support. We've identified that we can help promote this organization to organizations in this region that work with individuals with physical barriers to mobility. And of course, we have several within this region that provide those types of services. And we've also identified that we can support in a very similar way to what we do with many organizations, is help them identify grants and opportunities to make their initiative feasible and sustainable. So those are the two recommendations. We also identified and added a link for council if you wish to review at a later time. They provide an update on where they're at with their project, and looks to be fairly successful this summer. So we'll continue to keep in touch and support where we can administratively.
Okay, and that would be similar to the support you provide to community halls when they have questions about grants or grant writing, and letting them know about those sorts of things as well, correct? Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions?
Councillor Vandenberg.
Go ahead, Councillor Vandenberg.
Hi, so I look at this as an opportunity to help and really this is a startup initiative, and they don't have the ability to provide us with any financials or budget information like any of the other groups that come in for requesting grants. But certainly at the very least, we can promote their work to appropriate regional agencies. I'm reading in the recommendation that resources and supports available to nonprofit organization means the similar requests for money that other organizations come to us for. But once again, I'll point out is that they do have a business plan, they do have financials, they do have a budget. So I just wanted to bring that up as a distinction in this ask.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'll support the recommendation that Governance and Priorities Committee direct administration. So we're asking them to help direct administration to support the work of Accessible Waters through providing access to resources and supports available to the not-for-profit organization, and by promoting their work to appropriate regional agencies. I think that we can be a broker that way and help this organization get its feet underneath it and work for the betterment of people in our region. Motion is on the floor, open for debate, comments, or questions.
Councillor Vandenberg.
Go ahead.
Can I ask then administration to define what access to resources and supports would look like? Maybe if I had that clarity, it would be better.
Thank you. Mr. Honesty?
Yeah, basically through just regular communication, we would identify if they're having struggles or concerns. And we also, with our organizations, if a grant is announced that falls within the line of the scope of certain organizations, we'll send those grants out to those organizations and even offer to assist them in seeing if it fits for them. Helping them at times write it is a way we support them. As a not-for-profit, another way that our team supports organizations is understanding their bylaws, understanding policies within our organization. So we could provide that role as well as they're developing, as they're defining who they are. We can be a review support as well.
So brokering support, reviewing support.
Correct.
Using really our administration to help them get started.
Yeah. No, and that's good. That helps immensely. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Motion is on the floor. Going to call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Honesty. On to 6A, which is Q2 2022 Long Range Planning Quarterly Update and 2023 to 2025 Work Plan. Mr. Evans, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. As noted, this is a Q2 update on the projects being undertaken by the long-range planning side of the group and a proposed 2023 to 2025 work plan for the regional and long-range planning group. So there's 4 items that I'll update on with regards to the long-range planning activities. The first being the Southern Country Residential Area Structure Plan, the Central Nisku Local Area Redevelopment Plan, the monitoring and reporting, and the repeal of the North Major and the associated updates associated with that. So with regards to the Southern Country Residential Area Structure Plan, which I will refer to as SCRAS from now on, it's being completed by V3 Consulting on behalf of both Leduc County and AB Exterior Homes, who we are partnered with for this project. As council will know, the ASP was tabled in May of 2021, and that was due to the outcome of the public hearing for that process. Since that time, we've had 2 workshops with council just to discuss council's direction for servicing country residential development generally throughout Leduc County. Subsequent to that, we also held a joint workshop with our partner in April to discuss some of the options moving forward. So as an outcome of that process, council indicated that they'd like to have administration look at some of the servicing options and come back to council specifically to discuss council's preferred direction. And that workshop is planned for next week on the 12th. So the report is being prepared and you'll have that shortly. So pending the outcome of that process, the plan would be brought back to council for consideration. The Central Nisku Local Area Redevelopment Plan. So IBI Consulting is preparing this on behalf of Leduc County. We had a fairly successful public engagement process that played out throughout 2021, the last one being in Q4 of 2021. So following on that, administration's been working with IBI to develop a draft plan that we could then present back to public and ultimately present to council for approval. However, it's been delayed a little bit due to the timeline for the infrastructure assessment that's being undertaken by engineering and utilities for the Nisku area, and also the transportation master plan. And we feel that the delay will allow us to come up with with a plan that reflects the most recent servicing information and give us a more implementable plan at the end of the day. So this would be potentially a 6-month delay, but still be completed by the end of Q4 of this year. The original timeline was to be completed at the end of Q2. With regards to the North Major Area Structure Plan and the LASPs that fit within that plan, the North Major was repealed and the East Vista's Local Area Structure Plan was amended to become a standalone area structure plan on May 10th of this year. The remaining local area structure plans that fell within the North Major but now fall within the Nisku MEC area structure plan are the WAM LASP, which is commonly referred to as Border Business Park, the QE2 Business Park LASP, and the Royal Cabrera LASP. So they all need to be amended just basically to reflect the current statutory environment. We have administration working on that, and they will be brought back and presented to council for consideration in the fall. And then finally, the MDP implementation and monitoring program was presented to this committee just last month. As a part of the discussion on that, we committed to coming back to council with a discussion of our work plan. And so that's being delivered in conjunction with this report. Madam Chair, I can just pause there if there are any questions on the update portion of the report.
Any questions on the update part of the report? I think we're fairly familiar with the work that you're working on, and we appreciate some dates for when the projects will be done or when the next reports are coming. I am seeing and hearing no questions, so move on, Mr. Evans, to 2023-2025 work plan.
Okay, I'll start just by giving you a brief overview of what we're talking about for 2023. You'll note I apparently caused some confusion in my report saying that there are 3 projects for next year and then referencing 4 of them. The reason for that is because the interim review of the MDP actually is anticipated to start in Q3 of this year, but will comprise a major portion of our work plan for next year. So that MDP review council would be, the committee would be familiar with that process. We did a little bit of scoping work with council in January of this year to talk about what would be involved in that plan. Fundamentally, it's being driven earlier than initially anticipated in the MDP itself by the anticipated adoption of the Regional Agricultural Master Plan by the province. Unfortunately, I don't have a date to give you for when that will happen. It is still with the province, and we haven't been able to get any confirmation from them or the MRB at this time, but we do anticipate that it will happen this year. As mentioned, we talked a little bit about the scoping in January, how this is being driven by RAMP, but also that it would incorporate some other legislative changes that have happened since the adoption of the MDP. We anticipate bringing the project charter forward to you. We just got a date, so it'll actually be early September that we are bringing that forward for council's consideration.
Okay.
The second project that the first one that we're anticipating initiating in 2023 would be a new local area structure plan for the remaining lands in North Nisku that are not currently included in a local area structure plan. So very high level, I've outlined where those lands are in red on this map. So the other portions north of Township Road 510 and east of the Blackmud Creek in North Nisku are all currently contained in one of the 3 LESPs previously mentioned. We're proposing to undertake this project largely to facilitate investment readiness for the county. This a fairly large chunk of greenfield industrial land in an area where we're seeing some of our largest development pressures and some of our most significant economic development activity. And so we want to ensure that we are ready for investment when that comes forward. The second project we're looking to initiate next year would be an area structure plan for the Western Agricultural Hub. This was initially proposed to be started this year, but was moved into next year's work plan. Council may remember that the municipal development plan outlines 2 agricultural hub areas in the county. This one is generally located south of the intersection of Highway 60 and 39. And the intent of an agricultural hub in the MDP is largely to provide a servicing node for the agricultural industry. So this is fairly central to one of the county's most significant agricultural areas and some of our highest productivity agricultural lands. And so we want to ensure that we are servicing that industry in a way that helps sustain them for the long term. And then the third thing that we're anticipating for next year would be the review of the intermunicipal development plans and ICF collaboration frameworks with Kalmar, Thorsby, and Warburg. These are mandated by those documents themselves. Council or the committee may remember that we undertook these projects jointly. Maybe jointly is not the right word, but as part of one project for the county 4 years ago. And they anticipate that they would be reviewed basically once each term by the councils, and that sort of is intended to facilitate collaboration with our intermunicipal partners. The documents themselves do reference the year 2023 as the year that they would be initiated.
Councillor Lewis has a question.
Will this be the committee, the IDP committee getting together and reviewing it with Warburg, Thorsby, and Kalmar, or is this administrative review?
No, so it would be, Madam Chair, it would be the committee, I'm trying to remember the name of it, Intermunicipal Liaison Committee of Leduc County would be responsible for that project. And so we would need to have some initial scoping discussions with the towns and village just to map out exactly how that's going to look, but certainly we'd see it being governed by that committee.
Thank you.
So that's basically what we're proposing for new projects in 2023. Moving on to the second year of a sort of 3-year work plan that we're looking at. It's largely driven by the MDP itself and sort of the policy within some of our documents. So we're looking to do an urban agricultural strategy for the urban center as defined by the municipal development plan, which is basically the East Vista's area structure plan. So this is something that is mandated by the Regional Agricultural Master Plan again, all urban municipalities and municipalities with urban centers undertake them. And so.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Vandenberg.
It's Smith.
Oh, sorry, Smith.
That's okay. Just a question. You were talking about the urban node, the center over there. Can you give me just a question? Is there any advantage to making that a hamlet, much the same as Sherwood Park is, going forward for services, or is it still just going to remain a rural urban area?
There's some thinking going on.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm not sure that I can fully answer that question. I know that the designation of hamlets has some implications for grant funding programs through the provincial government, but I think that that may be something that Council wants to look at when a full review of the East Vista's local area structure plan is undertaken. We don't have that in our existing 3-year work plan. Of course, that's subject to Council's priorities, but it's certainly something that will need to be looked at throughout the life cycle of the municipal development plan itself. So I guess we'd currently be looking at doing it beyond 2025 at this point.
But it can be something we can look at, so we can put that in our notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I say, that's subject to Council's priorities for sure. The second project that we'd be looking at initiating in 2024 would be a review of the IDPs and the IDP and the ICFs with the summer villages on the north side of Pigeon Lake. So Council and the committee may remember that we adopted one joint IDP with the summer villages that encompasses sort of the border areas with both those summer villages and the county. And then we adopted independent collaboration frameworks with each one of them. So much like the IDPs and ICFs with Kalmar Thorsby Warburg, they do need to be reviewed once per term. And this is when we're anticipating doing it within this term. So subject to that, as noted, most of our ASPs do need to be reviewed at some point during the MDP life cycle. And so with the review of the IDP with the Pigeon Lakes at the summer villages at Pigeon Lake, we'd be looking at reviewing the North Pigeon Lake ASP as well.
Jordan, just a question on the Wizard Lake ASP then. We've had a couple of developments that have come forward and not gone through for a whole bunch of reasons, right? One of them was council chose, and one of them was administration. They didn't meet the requirements as per administration. Should we be looking at that ASP because there seems to be a belief that there no more development is good development there, but the ASP currently outlines that is developable for recreation or whatever else. So is it prudent to take a look at that, or is that too big of a project?
I wouldn't say that it's too big of a project. I would say that it's a matter of what's council's priorities, right? And so certainly if it's council's priority to review the Wizard Lake ASP earlier than anticipated, then we can certainly look at how we can fit that in. It would be similar to the North Pigeon Lake ASP in that it will need to be reviewed. basically by 2029, which is the timeline of the MDP. And so within a longer sort of 10-year work plan, we would definitely have that in there. It's just not showing up in this 3-year work plan. So,
and that's fine, as long as we're looking at it. It's just, if our planning documents aren't actually what we want, then we should be reviewing them. No, I'm fine with it showing up somewhere in the near future. Thank you.
Okay. So that's 2024. For 2025, we're looking at initiating an update to the Genesee ASP. Again, there's no sort of emergent issue that we're looking to address here. This is just a prudent part of implementing that timeline of the MDP. And so it would be time to take a look at that Genesee ASP, open it up with the community, and determine if it still meets the vision of council and the community. In addition to that, we'd be looking at a review of the intermunicipal development plan we have with Devon and the South Devon area structure plan, as those documents are embedded within each other.
Okay, makes sense.
So overall, over the 4-year timeline, including this year, that's generally what our project plan looks like. Again, this is subject to council priorities and emergent issues, but this is what we're anticipating at this point, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions that the committee may have, Madam Chair.
Okay, so page 42 of 81 shows the plans on a Gantt chart. So any questions or comments on that? And again, this isn't, if nothing changes, no big changes to the MGA, things that would cause us to work differently.
Absolutely.
Comments, questions? Seeing none, I think you used enough acronyms, so we're good. So we have 2 recommendations before us. First, that the committee receive the 2022 Q2 quarterly update as information, and 2, that the committee provide feedback, if any, on the proposed 2023 to 2025 long-range planning work plan. And we can move those together, correct, Mr. Coleman?
Probably just requires a motion to receive as information if there's no formalized
just
feedback
as information, okay.
that the committee wants to give.
Someone want to move those 2 as information? Councillor Lewis will, thank you. Comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. On to Ms. Klamosko and county signage implementation plan.
Good morning. So we have a report for council's consideration today to look at an implementation plan for our county signage. So a little background on this project. So the administration is seeking council's input on an implementation plan to replace 6 categories of municipal signage. So you have Leduc County gateway signs and Nisku Business Park entryway signs, Hamlet subdivision campground, and park entryway signs. A workshop, we've held multiple workshops over the last number of months, the last one being on March 24th, and where we discussed multiple design concepts. And we received some consensus from council on the designs to move forward with, which I did include an attachment to the report that had a visual representation of those design concepts. At that time, council had indicated a desire to see an implementation option that resulted in the completion of the project within their current elected term. And this would result in a 3-year implementation plan, spreading the cost of the project over 2023, 2024, and 2025. In addition to a 3-year plan, administration has provided 2 other options for council's consideration: a 5-year implementation plan, which extends to 2027, and an upon end of life replacement plan with a few key locations replaced in 2023. So administration does not recommend a signage implementation plan that stretches beyond 5 years, as this approach would maximize brand consistency and minimizes the risk of material cost increases. So based on the agreed upon design concepts that we discussed in March, Burke Group provided preliminary build estimates for the 6 types of signs, and the costs per sign are as followed. So they gave us a range for every category of sign. So with the gateway signs, we have the primary and the secondary. So the primary range from 32,000 to 42,000, secondary 13 to 21, Nisku Business Park entryway signs from 32 to 42, Hamlet 13,000 to 21,000, subdivision entryway 4,000 to 7,000, campground entryway signs 2,000 to 5,000, park entryway signs 6,000 to 9,000. So these estimates include the cost of material, installation, and foundation work, but do not include, if required, the cost for site surveys, site meetings, and permits. The estimated lifespan for the new signs would be a minimum of 10 years, but really with the materials that are being proposed, it would be expected that the life cycle of the signs would be 20 years. So using the highest estimated cost per
Ms.
sign.
Tomasko,
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Lewis has a question.
Sure.
Thanks. Based on your expected of 20 years, how long have the current ones, like the ones on Highway 2, been there that are now starting to slowly fall apart?
I don't have that information readily available to the date that those signs were installed. I don't have that information.
Since I've been living out here, which would be 20 years. Yeah.
So looking at the highest estimated cost per sign, we outlined the cost of the various implementation plans that administration has proposed in this report. Just one piece of information that was not included that I just wanted to add this morning in this conversation was the inventory of signs that we are looking to replace within these implementation plans is 126 signs. So we do have a lot of signage within the county. So I think I just wanted to provide that number to council verbally. So looking at option A, and so obviously, as I'm sure when council looked at this project, and it is a fairly high cost to do an implementation of all of those 126 signs. We did look at prioritizing based on our conversations that we've had with council, and that's really formed the basis of how we did these implementation plans. So looking at option A, what we're proposing for more immediate replacement in 2023 are the primary gateway signs, secondary, and Nisku Business Park entryway signage. So we really had, through our conversations, identified those as, there's higher traffic volume, a lot of activity in terms of economic development, building our brand with those signs being the priority. So then looking at 2024 for Hamlet Campground and Park, and then 2025 for subdivision entryway signage. Going to option B, we wanted to spread this over a longer period of time, just given the financial impact of the project. So we did primary and 3 Nisku Business Park entryway signs in 2023, then continued with Nisku Business Park in 2024 with some secondary gateway signage, and then 2025 looking at Hamlet entryway signage, campground in 2025. 2026 would be park entryway and 31 subdivision entryway signs, and then 2027 another 46 subdivision entryway signs. Option C was, again, realizing the financial impact of what we have proposed here. We also added an option C in terms of recognizing that perhaps we would do some key primary signs in 2023 and take the approach that other signs are replaced upon end of life. So the one thing I'd like to add through our conversations with the Burke group in terms of implementation costs for these signage designs, I think a big part why you see a range in cost within this report is, Burke group did indicate to us that, there is been a lot of volatility, obviously, with supply costs for really everything that we have in our lives today, I would say. So they did indicate that we asked them if we would have done this a few, pre-COVID, what would the costs have been, just to give us some perspective of what kind of volatility they've seen in the market in terms of the costing of these signs. They had indicated to us that approximately 20% more right now in what we're seeing with costing for some of this work. So I just wanted to provide that context because I know you know, when we have a range of prices being proposed here, that, I just wanted to provide a bit of extra context information. So, so I guess a couple of other points that I would add to this. So the recommendation that administration has put in the report is to refer a signage implementation plan to 2023 budget for consideration. So I would like to have a discussion with council today to find out what they prefer in terms of a potential implementation plan that then we can incorporate those discussions into the various discussions that we're going to have throughout the remainder of 2022 leading up to budget deliberations in November of this year. So with that, I would open the floor to any questions or comments from council on this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report and the breakdowns and all of those pieces. We really appreciate it. I'm sorry, who was on the line?
Smith?
Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
I certainly, I think council has said this is important. I'd like to see it funded in 3 years and get it done within this term. Some people may not see the value in what we're trying to do by branding and the overall program that we have. So I would hate to see somebody come in with zero knowledge of what we're trying to do with the overall branding and cancel it to be a hero and save $8. So for me, I'm looking at a 3-year implementation before the end of this term, and it's important to the program that this council has continued to move through with branding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Klamosko.
One thing I failed to mention earlier, that in terms of once we have a project we've moved forward with implementation, we would actually go to tender to do the work. So then we also would have more certainty in terms of the cost that we would be looking at to replace. So right now, part of the work that Burke Group is doing for us is detailed plans or design build books so that we're able to go to RFP or RFT to get, and we'll have really detailed information for people to bid on the project. So I just wanted to add that information. Thank you.
Floor is open for any other comments or questions. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. At the RFT process, if all the plans that come back or exceed what our budget is, what's the process at that point?
I think the process would be similar to how we handle any project that would come over significantly over budget. Some conversation would have to take place. There's a few things that we could do. We could amend the quantity of signs that we replace to align the project within budget. There could be a report come to council to look at whether we want to add budget dollars to be able to replace the number of signs that we originally had intended. So there would definitely, a project would not proceed without further discussion if the tenders came in beyond our anticipated project that's approved through budget.
And this would be funded from tax dollars?
At this point, I haven't identified a funding source just because as we navigate preparing the 2023 budget for council's consideration, then we would start to incorporate all the various funding sources into that document. There are some, potential other funding sources that we could look to fund part of these. We do have some reserve dollars that may be able to be brought in because they align with the purpose for that the reserve is set up for. So that would be something that we would look into further once we move forward through the budget process.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie.
I guess I would struggle with this until we know where this funding's coming from. Yeah, it'd be nice to have signs out there, new signs, but we had a big discussion here a week ago about trying to keep our budget between the 2% and 3% increase. And this is showing between a 1% and 1.5% increase just to cover these signs next year. So we're struggling to cut costs on other services to keep ourselves at a reasonable rate of a raise of the taxes. So I just don't see this being that important that it needs to be done at this point, unless there's funding there sitting someplace that would cover it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lewis?
Thank you. I would like to see this go to budget so that we could see what the impact would be at budget time. Funding sources would be identified at that point, whether it's tax dollars or whatever other funding source it might be. And then we can make a decision then. But I think if administration can plan for it to at least be included, then we can make a decision at that point, whether or not we support it.
Councillor Vandenberg.
Go ahead, Councillor Vandenberg.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Lewis to be able to at least see what it looks like. I'm hearing what Councillor Smith is saying in the 3-year scope, but I'm kind of leaning towards the option C, and that is to replace end of life scenario or strategy. And so, but maybe as a result of coming back with the 2023 budget, we can see that picture and make those decisions better.
Thank you. And again, it's an interesting piece to be sitting at, because I don't believe I've ever had a resident say to me, gee, you guys need to replace all the signs in the county. However, I see that they're not particularly sufficient, right? As a counselor who has pride in her community, yes, it would be nice to have, especially on the highway and Nisku Business Park, some signs that really show a bit of pride. But I'm not sure my residents would say, you know, Councillor DeBlanco, we think $1.6 million is reasonable. So I'm sort of leaning towards, I would actually be leaning towards a little bit like Councillor Vandenberg, but maybe it's worth going to budget and making the decision there. I certainly couldn't support the 3 years. It is just too much money. And when I look at $1.6 million, that's another 20 miles of rural road initiative. It's another 7 miles or whatever of paved road, or our last link, or the things that we've already committed to. We've committed to residents for a whole bunch of things. And perhaps when I see that laid out in front of me, because I believe that we need to finish up that last link before we perhaps start something new, but I don't know what that looks like. So I would support Councillor Lewis's idea that we actually put this out onto our budget and we cost it out and we look at what we've already committed to. Because I'm with Councillor Scobie. Our residents are being hit like everybody else with inflation and job pressures and a whole bunch of things. And I don't want to go even actually near 3% for taxes, but if that's where we have to go, we have to go. But this wouldn't be what pushes me there. Councillor Balazer.
I too agree with Kelly.
Go ahead, Councillor.
With Kelly Lynn here, but to me, there is one important place. And one thing that we discussed in detail last time was the Nisku Business Park signage. We're way out to lunch on this. This has got to be updated. So
Absolutely.
If nothing else, let's bring this to budget and take a look at the Nisku signage to start with, because this is our meat and potatoes here. And this is, to me, very important to us.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Just a reminder, in the business area in Nisku, it is part of our economic development. So while your residents may not want to pay for signage for the business park in Nisku, they sure enjoy the tax break. So you can always tell them, if you're struggling with how to explain it, that Nisku pays your bill and Nisku's taxes will easily cover the signage in there. So let's not get too close-minded on Billy that lives down the road that doesn't want to pay any taxes or doesn't want to have any benefits. For the majority of the business park that, again, pays my taxes, at least half my bill. So be cognizant of that as we have one resident that doesn't want to pay anything other than what they need, maybe a subdivision or something. So let's be careful and open-minded.
Thank you. I'm hearing a desire to refer to budget, to take a look at where this would come from and what it would look like. Ms. Klamoska, what do you need from us?
So would council, in terms of the report, we have the option A, B, or C. I'm just wondering if council would refer a specific option to budget for consideration.
I heard Counselor Smith say A and I heard Counselor Vandenberg say C. Can we, without having to make that decision now, can you just give us some ideas where the money, because whether it comes out in 5 years or 3 years, the money's going to come from somewhere. Mr. Coleman, is that okay? Because I'm not sure that a straw poll today is going to create the direction that we want.
Yeah, I think the challenge is trying to determine a B or C scenario. I think if council wants to refer this to budget, a motion that you refer the implementation plan and ask administration to bring back costing on the 3 options and funding source.
Perfect. So someone make a motion that council refer a signage implementation plan of the 3 options to 2023 budget considerations with funding sources. Councillor Balazier will. I know you would. I saw that. Okay, so we're asking council, we're asking our administration to do a significant amount of work, but I think it will help us make the best decision once we see what our other commitments are, when we see what our grants are, when we've actually talked through what's important, what have we already said we were going to say yes to. So that's the motion on the floor. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? That's unanimous. And that takes us to our lunch break. So I will recess for lunch until 1:30. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the afternoon session of our Governance and Priorities Committee meeting of Tuesday, July 5th. We have Councillor Smith and Councillor Vandenberg who are joining us remotely. And we are going to go to our item 9, our 1:30 item, which is new business, council residency letter. I put that on the agenda. On June 14th, we had a resident come at the beginning of the meeting as a delegation to speak to county council and ask a question about the residency of his councillor in Division 3. Because of the process that we have, the councillor did not have an opportunity to debate or respond. And our process is that our administration replies with a letter, which is provided in your package as of June 22nd. And in that letter, it just talks a little bit about the presentation, but it does say that, and I will quote, our office has not received any formal notification that Division 3 councillor no longer resides within Leduc County, and then has some other things. I thought it would be fair and transparent to allow Councillor Vandenberg to be able to respond to this. He has not had the opportunity to do that publicly, and this would be an opportunity for him to set this straight. I have had a couple of questions from residents about what does this mean, what could it mean, and have not been able to answer those. So that's the purpose of this, and would like to provide Councillor Vandenberg an opportunity to respond to the question from the June 14th meeting. Thank you.
Well, then I guess I'll take the floor. I had no knowledge that this was coming forward, so therefore no preparation. Did not understand the context of it. And yes, you're correct. I had no opportunity to respond in any fashion, nor was I approached on the matter. And the only order of business that I am seeing is the response from our administration to that request. And I guess at this point in time, I'm doing what I need to do in my personal affairs, and I'm going to just leave it at that. And and hope that you respect that it takes time to do real estate transactions and to make other arrangements. And in the normal course of notifying accounts and services and so on, that is ongoing.
So Councillor Vandenberg, are you still residing in Division 3 then in Leduc County?
I am, but I will caution you that your line of questions are going over the line of personal.
I'm sorry, they were not meant to do that. What I have read in the letter that was provided by administration is that councillors have to, when they apply for nominations, demonstrate that they do live in the division. And when I read this through it, and they need to remain there. And a resident brought up a concern that you may not be doing that. And so as a council member, it is a council issue. That is why I'm bringing it up.
I'd like to jump in on this.
Councillor Smith?
If you look at our code of conduct, every councillor is responsible for their behavior. I'm just wondering, is this a witch hunt, and how would a resident come up with questioning that a councillor has moved? It's not illegal to sell your home in Leduc County. It's also not illegal to stay at somebody's place in your division while you're working through your next transaction and getting ready to move into your home, as long as you have an address. So I'm wondering, with the professional code of conduct, which also says that no other councillor shall do anything spiteful towards another councillor, I'm just wondering, the last terms we've had other people going, and Tanny, I had people, while I chaired, came in and made accusations against you, which we never debated, which I was careful not to debate in council chambers. So I'm just wondering why we've changed the process of questioning a councillor that could quite frankly be done. And I did my due diligence and I checked with this councillor, because if this councillor wasn't living there, it would be unprofessional, unbecoming behavior, and I would have filed a professional conduct complaint. However, doing my own due diligence to the behavior of councillors, I believe Councillor Vandenberg is fulfilling. Just because somebody asks doesn't mean that it becomes something in an open public debate. However, I do have concerns how one resident that has no connection whatsoever, other than the realtor that sold it, is making a question, and all of a sudden it's an open debate. And again, in all fairness, Mayor DeBlanco, we never had an open debate when people came in with allegations against you. It was handled by our administration in a professional manner. So I'll see where this goes, but I may file an unprofessional conduct complaint today or after I get through this, based on what's going here. I see this as a bit of a witch hunt. I want to be on a council that functions and works together. And if we are doing spiteful stuff for the next 3.5 years, it's really going to grind the business that we can do. So make sure everybody that's filing complaints or having people come in on their behalf or what they're doing, that you read the professional code of conduct that we have. And I'm seeing some, again, my job was to find out whether this council was there. I did that. I've done my checks, other than going over and physically inspecting his bedroom and his bathroom and his toothbrush. This is really inappropriate. If it goes much farther, look for another second filing of a complaint against some councillors or who found out. I think we need an investigation here.
Thank you for that perspective, Councillor Smith. I mean, the question was asked, and when I read the letter, it does state that they hadn't received any formal notification that he no longer resides. And this is just to help ensure that, number one, Councillor Vandenberg had an opportunity to respond to this question. And number two, as a council, we are bound by the MGA and the disqualifications there. And this is that open and transparent opportunity for that conversation to happen. I'm hearing from...
If I could add, follow up.
Just let me see if there's anyone else. Nope. Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
The letter indicates that there's no indication that the councillor doesn't live there from admin. It's all of our responsibilities to make sure we follow the rules. At that point, I was satisfied with the letter and needed no further clarification on it. I've done due diligence on it and is satisfied, other than, again, inspecting the counselor's home right now, which would probably be more inappropriate than the conversation that's going. And I'll go back to the conversation when we had the people in from Oltrex that made accusations against you, which may or may not have been true, and I'm not saying they have found others. However, admin provided a letter, and that's where it ended. So I'm just wondering, again, I have some real concerns about, A, you can legally sell your home. It doesn't say in the Municipal Government Act you can't sell your home. It also says that you need to live in your division. You can rent. I assume you can live in an RV at Joe Lakes. With the way the market is. So I'm just wondering, and Councilor Vandenberg did respond, and I'm just wondering about these other residents that have issued complaints. Should they not be writing in as well, or are we taking complaints and questioning councilors at the table based on one or two of my residents? And I have lots of questions from my residents on all of our councilors, and basically I respect the job that they do. So Councilor Vandenberg has responded today, saying that he sold his home. He's working on a real estate transaction to move through. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether than the letter saying there's no indication and the counselor saying it's private. I think other than maybe finding out who these other residents are through an investigation, maybe something that we need to do, because this kind of stinks to me. So let's see where it goes. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any other comments? So just to clarify with you, Councillor Vandenberg, I'm hearing Councillor Smith say that you're in a transition period. Is that correct?
This is now entering into my business. I've already answered your question, your concern. I'm not taking this into the public forum any longer. I am quite comfortable with how I've acted and my professionalism. And I'm going to leave it at that and follow due process like any other normal human being would.
Okay, and then I assume you are aware of the consequences that were provided in this letter and understand all those should things not work out the way they've been shared.
I can read the letter as well as anyone else.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Looking for someone to move for information. Councillor Balazer, all in favor? That's unanimous. Sorry, not unanimous, sorry. Against? Councillor Lewis. On to 10A, local government fiscal framework backgrounder. Oh, right. Any questions on this from the RMA? Hearing none. Questions from the County of St. Paul on utilities, rising utility fees? I'm seeing none. Someone want to move those two reports? Councillor Wanchuk, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous. On to in camera, move in camera. Councillor Scobie. Okay, move in camera. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. We're back on live in our Governance and Priorities Committee meeting. We made our only motion in the in-camera session was to come out of in-camera, and we do have one piece of business arising from the in-camera session, which is the decision about sending the Growth Management Board Rural Caucus letter. So with that, I will open the floor for conversation, discussion, or a motion. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. Do we know if the other counties are signing?
Ms. Bisbar?
The other rural Edmonton region.
Oh, your microphone. Thank you.
The Edmonton region mayors, their administration have told me that they're going to sign it, but nobody had signed it yet. And Strathcona was still going to council for decision as well, but they thought that it would be a likely.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Looking for a motion or send the letter or not send the letter? Councillor Balazer? Councillor Balazer makes a motion that we send the letter to the minister from the Growth Management Board Rural Caucus. What does that say? That the Governance and Priorities Committee authorize the mayor to sign, I can't see, it's worse when you do that. Oh, there, to sign the RMA Growth Management Board Rural Caucus letter. Okay. Motion is on the floor. Thank you very much, Ms. Gavin. I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? And that is unanimous, and we will adjourn at 2:19. Thank you very much.